Welcome to Determine OutLoud, our podcast series that's all about minding your business in contract management and source to pay. And now, your host, Buyers Meeting Point owner, Kelly Varner.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this latest episode of Determine OutLoud. Today, my guest is Eléonore Roucaute, Determine's EMEA Marketing Manager. Now, everyone is familiar with Determine, the overall brand, but their business unit operating out of France has extensive experience across industries, including retail, healthcare, chemicals, and manufacturing. So a lot of applied expertise that goes across very different verticals. Welcome, Eléonore. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you.
Now, Determine has just released an eBook titled The Procurement Maturity Curve, a 4-stage hierarchy of value. This book pulls together ideas from some unexpected places, starting with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. His theory on human motivation looks at why people do things rather than exactly what they're doing. So, for instance, someone stranded alone in the woods probably isn't going to start out by trying to build a library. They're going to build some kind of shelter to keep themselves safe. And for those of us living in the first world, for whom access to food and shelter is relatively easy, it's natural to be a little bit further down the progression where we're looking to have more complex civic engagement and advanced forms of entertainment. So the same progression can actually be observed as our procurement organizations mature. And that's actually what I'd like to ask you a few questions about today, Eléonore. Let's start off by talking about some of the fundamentals. So if we think about that person that's stranded in the woods, they're just trying to make it 1 hour, 1 day at a time. They're functioning at a survival level basis. Do you think today's procurement teams are meeting those survival level needs?
I would say it really depends on the organization, the size of the organization, the type of industry. We've recently interviewed dozens of CPOs here in France, and we've conducted a survey to about 200 CPOs here in France too. And what I can say is that some of them are already really matured in their organization, meaning they are not just talking about savings internally, they are also talking about internal cooperation, they are talking about team management, supplier innovation, etc. And others are really still focusing on savings. So I would say it depends.
And did you notice any, either you mentioned both industry and the size of the company in terms of whether or not they're meeting needs. When you look across that group of 200 CPOs, did you notice any groupings that maybe the teams that were in retail or manufacturing where cost is exceptionally important were maybe moving beyond savings into R&D innovation with suppliers? Or did you notice that some of the industry that are maybe more regulated or driven by laws and oversight are focusing more on supplier visibility? Any trends or similarities that jumped out at you?
I know retail industry is really still focusing on savings because the retail world has been changed with the arrival of the Amazons and eBays, etc. So savings is still very important for them. However, we have a couple of retail players here in France, and I'm noticing they're trying to still move away from just talking about savings. They are trying to talk about also not just the price of a product, but considering the cost of a product. The cost meaning compliance, risk, and everything underlying. Other than that, we have a couple of pharmaceuticals also customers. So pharmaceutical is a really regulated sector, and therefore managing risk and compliance is still very, very important for them. And so what they are looking at when they are buying a solution is to make sure that it will help them gain visibility and control over their spend, over the suppliers, and also over their overall, I would say, performance.
Now, it's interesting that you talk about some of those differences because savings was one of the things I was going to ask you about. And I don't think we're ever truly going to get away from savings being at least a top 3 priority from procurement's perspective. But as you've observed, maybe the relationship that procurement has with savings has changed. So it sounds like some of what you're hearing is that where for a fundamental level procurement organization, they would say, okay, today I buy this widget. And if I consolidate all of my suppliers, if I standardize all of my specifications, I can buy this widget for 1 penny less. And over the extended volume, I can save a bunch of money. But it sounds like now there's more of an understanding of maybe the role that widget plays in an assembly or in the overall operation, or maybe a sense of risk and sort of a total cost of ownership picture. Do you think that the way procurement looks at savings and how to generate it over the long term is either shifting or is becoming sort of a bigger picture type of relationship?
Yeah, totally. I would say, savings are still in the top 3 priorities or top 3 KPIs. But when you talk to them about the competencies that they want to develop, they are more interested in innovation with suppliers, sustainability, collaboration, etc. So I would say they are trying to, as you said, to move away from just savings per se, but more talking about how the procurement can help the company increase its performance, its global performance beyond savings. And they want some of them. The management are still seeing procurement team as a saving department, and some of them are starting to see procurement as a service bringing more value or the value to the company. So the more and more they really want the procurement objectives to be aligned with the company objectives, more and more.
And that's certainly good for procurement, but sometimes I know it can create challenges where the C-suite or the executive team has one set of objectives, but how that actually rolls out to budget owners, to internal stakeholders, to distributed buyers might be a little bit different, because if our executive team is saying to us, drive savings, and we get pushback, or if they're saying to us, become more value oriented, get involved in these different kinds of projects, maybe not everybody at all levels in the organization is as excited at having procurement join their project teams. Are you hearing that as procurement expands beyond traditional KPIs like savings and compliance, that they're investing in these capabilities around innovation and sustainability? Are you hearing anything about how receptive their cross-functional partners are to procurement's role changing?
Well, I didn't get the perspective of the other services talking to procurement, but what the procurement teams are saying is that by gaining more competencies into also business areas and not just procurement areas, they are being more respected and more listened to, because it goes both ways. If the procurement really listens to the team, to the different services they are working for example, IT, marketing, other types of department, if they are really carefully listening to their needs and gaining key skills, then they will be more respected and more listened to. So I think it goes both ways. And as a marketer, I would say that I know what I need, and if I'm in an organization where we don't have buyers, but I would say if we were having buyers, what I would like from a procurement person is really to listen carefully to my needs, understand them, and also go beyond that and try to look for more answers to surprise me. I would like to be surprised. so that we really I bring my business value, they bring their business and procurement value, and we work together to find the best solution. And what I'm hearing as well from procurement managers is that a buyer who's really dedicated in really learning, discovering the initial needs, and really carefully putting that together, then the outcome will be way better. I think a good buyer today is a good listener, in my opinion.
Interesting. And actually what it brings to mind is this idea that, we can think about procurement starting out at a very fundamental level and progressing from savings to compliance to risk mitigation and monitoring all the way up to something like collaboration with suppliers or innovation. But we're not alone, right? We're working in an organization where there's logistics and there's operations and there's R&D and there's sales and there's marketing. And ultimately, if all of the functions can't work well together, then everyone's survival is put in jeopardy. And so it's interesting. Now, I wish everyone shared your enthusiasm at the prospect of being surprised by procurement. I think that's a great thing for us to aspire to. I'm not entirely sure all teams would be as open to it, but I think it's the teams that would be concerned about being surprised by procurement that are actually missing out on the biggest upside value for potential that we can create. So if you're working with a team and they say, okay, there's these 3 suppliers, we kind of look them up, but we know who we want to work with. We already know everything. If they've closed themselves to surprise, then what opportunity do we really have to create value? It's only when we can, as you say, listen carefully, discover that need, go out and find different creative ways to meet the need, that we can get ourselves out of this space of just making the widget cost a penny less.
I agree. I really think that the more collaboration you bring on to the table, the better the services the procurement will provide to the internal stakeholder will be better. I agree.
No, that's terrific. Now, when the teams talked about building out these general business capabilities, were they talking about it in the sense of training and skills development? Were they more focused on recruiting, either outside the company or pulling other people from different functions in? Any sense of the direction that the majority of these companies were taking to meet these broader capability needs?
I would say they try to hire expert buyer in their field, capable of analyzing the competencies of the supplier, to get informed about the news, to go to conferences, learn about things. So especially when we talk about innovative procurement or buying innovative stuff, I'm thinking about all the people in the manufacturing industry, for example.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. So it also comes to the communication with new suppliers, how to communicate with them, especially innovative one. Startups, etc. So the way to communicate with a big supplier is not the same way as communicating with a young startup with a fresh product. So this is where also you can look for different competencies. They also can create specific events to share projects and what's at stake with suppliers. They can build specific framework to adapt the stand and practices to the context. So actually, they can do many different things. They can get help from the quality service and get training from the risk management. They can put in place surveys, performance surveys with suppliers. If we talk about, for example, competencies regarding CSR. Some of them talk about using the matrix of Kralik, I don't know how you say in English, to map the different purchases and evaluate the risk. They can do some campaigns to sensitize collaborators exposed to corruption, etc. So improve due diligence procedures. So they can do many things. And also when it comes to the young generation, they are trying to harness the skills of the new generation. So basically, for example, they are trying to look for new competencies on the internet. So the HR of these big organizations are really going into forums, talking to the young generation, and trying to spot the right profiles to hire them and be part of the procurement team. So I would say it's a mix of hiring strategies, development plans for each buyer, especially the young generation. For example, they like to do many things at the same time. They are very versatile, but they also have a hard time to focus on something. So we all know that. So they are trying to also orientate the job description of the new the buyers' new job descriptions to these needs, offering them to work on many different projects. And so this is part also of the, I would say, of the hiring and skills development strategy of procurement team today, from what I saw in the survey.
Interesting. And I think if there's maybe one concluding thought that I pull out of everything that we've discussed, it's that as much as procurement has matured from our very earliest days to where we are today, there is still plenty of potential and plenty of future work and plenty of progression that we can make as long as we continue to align what we accomplish with what the organization needs, as long as we continue to attract the best and brightest people that want to work hard and do amazing things. And maybe on a really good day, we manage to line everything up and pleasantly surprise someone. So Eléonore, thank you so much for sharing your point of view on the ebook.
Thank you very much, Kelly.
And thank you everyone for listening. Please be sure to look out for our next episode of Determine OutLoud.